Welcome back everyone to Reddish Bear Games, where we repair, mod, and refurbish retro game systems. Today we're going to be working on a Model 2 Sega CD, which we repaired in the previous video. But it still needs new capacitors and a general cleaning because it's a little bit of a mess. So that's what we're going to do today. I hope you liked the new intro. We're going to be trying to formalize our format a little bit more than we have, which means that we're going to have a better mix of long, short, and moderate videos, or more directly, I'm going to try and accommodate the length of the video to the type of the video. So for instance, today we're going to be doing a recap and refurb. You don't need to see every single minute of that. Removing one cap, replacing one cap looks like another. So I'm going to try and edit this one down to be an overview of the process. I'll try and show only interesting parts if there are any, but we don't have to belabor this. When we do a mod, we'll try and show the whole thing because there's a lot more detail there. Hopefully that will get a better mix of content for the channel. And let me know what you think of that. So without further delay, here's the refurb. All right, I've opened this back up and taken the drive mechanism back out so we can finish up the restoration, I guess. We need to get at the board, and then we have to work on the board on the laser mechanism eventually for a number of things. You can see there's quite a few caps in here. It's also, you can see that very well, it's generally dirty. There's some grease we probably want to reapply to the mechanism here, because obviously this is digital meets analog, so it needs a different sort of maintenance than we have to do on a lot of consoles. One thing that's important to note is that all the different models of SegaCD out there. This wide version is the version 2. This is a North American one. There were two different manufacturers for this, Sony and Funai, and you need a different cap kit for each, as the design is different. They use a different board even. On the North American model, you can tell the difference here. SNA means Sony. I think it says FN or something along those lines for Funai. So here we have a Sony, and I have a cap kit for Sony. And you can see there's quite a lot to get to in here. So I'll probably gloss over a lot of it because there isn't all that much notable about caps. You've seen a few, you've seen it all. And you certainly don't need to watch me in detail do each and every one of these things. But if there's something more interesting, like how the heck do we work under there, I have a feeling the answer is just going to be very carefully. I'll certainly cover that closer. Having said all that, let's get started and take the rest of this off. This has quite a lot of weird dust in it, so I'm going to set this aside for hand cleaning in the sink, since all the metal is out now. Here is the battery for the internal save. Honestly, I forgot it had this. I might consider replacing that while I'm in here, because it looks like a standard 3-volt deal. Okay, so I looked into this a little, and I do have rechargeables for this. It's not a 2016, it's a 2032, as I suspected, because I remember that the Sega CD would retain memory as long as you used it regularly, which implies rechargeable. But while looking into it, I discovered that there is a mod, or at least it's compatible with a mod, where you can replace the SRAM chip with an FRAM chip. FRAM doesn't need power to retain memory. And you can just simply replace this with a compatible FRAM, and you don't have to lose saves again. So I don't have the part right now, but that sounds like a cool thing to do for modding. So I may look into doing that. But for now, because of that, I'm not going to touch the the battery until I decide whether to do that or not. So I'm just going to start with the capacitors. There are an awful lot of them. Fortunately, they are all blue, so it's going to be hard to mix them up with the ones I'm replacing. Nonetheless, I'm still going to go through doing my marking thing because I don't know whether the board labels are trustworthy. So what I do is I just make a mark indicating a common direction, the back of the board. That way, if these were different color, it serves two purposes. The first would be to tell me if I'd forgotten any, because I'd have the marking to look at. As I'm doing it, I just use it as an excuse also to check the board markings versus the polarity, like the installed polarity. So you see how there's, I'm sure you can't see, there's a tiny plus here marked on the board. The line on the capacitor indicates negative, so we can see that this is correct. I'm just eyeballing that they're all correct as I go. They probably are. If I spot any that aren't, I'll try and make particular note of them. But if I'd forgotten to check this, or I wanted to double check myself, this marking would also let me reorient the cap correctly after I remove it, so I can figure out how it had been installed to double check again. But that's why it's important to pick one direction to mark them consistently. That gives you the orientation. Some of these are sideways, some of these are up and down. It doesn't matter. I marked towards the back. I picked one part of the board to be the back. This is perhaps more ritual than useful. But especially on these Sega parts, with a million caps, getting one wrong is hard to figure out if you come to it later. And we've got one hiding in here behind the heatsink. I think you could remove this heatsink. It's just got a screw into a regulator there. But it has a really large, thick metal tab here that appears to be twisted underneath the board. I think you'd have a hard time getting that out, and it's probably not worth it because we can get at the bottom of the cap just fine, and it won't be that hard to put it back in. So, not a fight we need to fight. Okay, so this is going to take quite a lot of desoldering. Okay, now we'll solder these into place. Nothing terribly interesting to see here. Just a little bit of flux to make the joints come out nicer. Doesn't need much. And one last one. All right, now we're just going to clip those off, and that'll be the first section done. I'm not going to go through everyone because they look all relatively boring and the same. So I'll just fast forward through most of this unless something comes up that's worth talking about. Some of these boards come from the factory covered in flux, just covered in it. Like there's a sheen of the stuff. And you don't notice until you try and clean up your own flux, which turns it sticky and gummy, and then it gets everywhere. Mostly I've seen this on Nintendo boards, but I guess Sony was similar. And it's a pain to clean. So if you wonder what the heck I'm doing with this cleaning already, I'm trying to keep the sticky stuff off my fingers so I can move on. You can see how yellow the wipe is, and that's flux that was already there. Look at that. And that isn't even wiping it, that's just runoff from alcohol that dripped down to the bottom of the board. Okay, so I did a chunk up here, this corner, and 5 in this vicinity, and I'm just left with this large cluster here. I was looking to see whether I could do it all as one go, so that I don't get confused with which pins on the bottom I've already done versus not. These are nearly all the same, except this guy hiding in the middle here is a different value than all the others. 6.3 and 100 microfarad. And these 3 are all different. This is also a 6.3 100. These 2 are 6.3 100. And this last one is 5 volt 0.47 microfarad. So I guess I'm going to do this cluster of 3 here by itself, and then probably remove and replace the weird guy here, but not solder him in yet, just so I get that out of the way, and then I'll do the rest of them are all the same. All right. That took quite a while, but I think we're good here. Probably the best thing to do next is to test what we have so far before we move on to messing with the CD mechanism, just to make sure that if we have a problem, we know it's more localized at this point. But before that, I'm going to go leave to clean the case out so that I don't put this back into some dusty mess. Okay, here is the unit reassembled minimally. I didn't screw it back down or anything. Just got the shell freshly cleaned. Can't really do much about this scuffing, but I'll try some polishing later when we're closer to finished. I don't know how the SegaCD version of this game compares to other versions. Just looking at it in isolation, I'm kind of inclined to think that this was supposed to be an answer to the Star Fox Super Effects thing. Like, hey, look, we can do polygonal ships too, and better. But maybe the timeline doesn't support that. I don't know. Anyway, actually, we didn't even get this far before, so I think the CD mechanism still having a bit of trouble is the most likely explanation here. The cap job on the motherboard seems to be just fine. So let's move on and see what we can do for the CD mechanism beyond the sensor we already fixed. Now, it's hard to tell if that lens is dirty or not. It looks pretty clean to me, but maybe we can go over it with alcohol just to be safe. So here's what I'm going to do, just to be safe. I'm going to pull this one out, and I think I need to grab it with tweezers to do that. Okay, here's the orientation it was in, and I'm going to quickly mark towards the laser. So that tells me negative went to the right. And I'm going to set it up here on the far right. I'm going to as I take each one out, I'll mark it the same way. Oh, I'm sorry, there are 5. There was one hiding behind this. And I can see there is marking on the board for positive. It's just going to be hard to make out from this angle. Obviously, if you could, it would be preferable to remove the board, but I don't really see a way to do that without really getting into some heavy disassembly I don't want to get into. So I'm going to put this one behind that one because that's sort of how it's oriented on the board. So now I have their layout and positions and values, and we can work on putting the replacements in. Okay, so let's start with the hardest to get one in the back. It's hard to even see the holes. They aren't outlined on this side, but got it. I'm going to do this big guy last because that looks like the easiest spot to access. So let's do the far left one. Orientation was what? That went backwards, so minus to the right. To be a little strategic about this, once it starts to come through, you're good. Might just take a little effort to pull it. but looks good. Try to eyeball that you're not getting the neighboring capacitor's mounting point though. I think I've got it fine. Then we're on to this one. I think I need a sharper bend here. Did I get it? Yes, I did. Good. They're both through. And I just have to kind of pull. There we go. Good. 2 down. 3 down, actually. Then this one is 1047 also. So we're going to use the 3547. And his orientation was also negative up. So same deal. Just use my tweezers to pull the short leg through. Good. And then we just have the big dude. 330/16 with the negative to the right. .330/16. This one should be pretty easy. We can more or less get a straight shot at the port here. All right, cool. Can we put something down to protect that lens? All right, now we just solder it on. So now we just do some cleaning. There do exist low lint swabs for this purpose, since Q-tips leave behind cotton residue pretty easily. Downside of them, you got to be careful about that. But the lintless type costs about 10 times more, maybe even worse. Since I buy these at Costco in giant packages. I don't know what that black scum is, but let's not keep it around. So anyway, my philosophy has been to just be careful with the lint, because I don't find that cost difference to be worthwhile. If I really need low lint, I can use the wipes, which are lint-free. Those do a wonderful job at sucking up flux too. But this gear mechanism, especially after that rough time it had with all the grinding, could certainly use some cleaning. We've definitely got some, can you see the white gunk built up here? I think that's old lubrication. Gonna wipe that out as much as I can. There's a big caked blob of it here. It's sort of just turned to rubber over time. So here's dried grease in the teeth too. We'll wipe that out as much as we can. All right, so I'm going to use lithium grease. And the way I'm going to use it from this giant tube is with the end of a twist tie. Just going to get a little bit on there. I mean, I'm not even scooping it out. I just kind of dipped it a little bit. And we're going to go just gently spread some of this on the teeth. We only need to do a little, and only on the track. then move it along, both to expose the other side to apply more here, but also to work it into the teeth so the teeth can spread some of it for us. Here. And we'll go back and forth a few times by turning this gear. And that should be good. We want it to be able to move easily, but we don't want it to, you know, be slippery. And I think with that, we are ready to try again. This is a beltless mechanism, so unlike some drives, we don't have to replace any belts. A lot of times the spindle is on a belt attached to the motor that wears out over time. On this, it's a direct attachment to the motor. Okay. So if it turns out we think we need to clean the laser later, we can do that while it's fully assembled, since the laser is always exposed to us. So I'm not worried about that. I think we can just go ahead and reassemble this for real at this point. Which is not that involved. This just sits here freely. It's supposed to be able to move. Don't like push down on it real hard. You'll just get it out of position. I'm gonna put some contact cleaner into the system connector. That dries real quick and has very, very high dielectric resistance, so we don't have to really worry about doing anything with it. The point of contact cleaner is to remove oxidation, primarily. These exposed contacts can build some up over time that makes them not work as well as they ought. I didn't even hear the single grinding sound that we'd been hearing. Hey, it auto started. I didn't realize it was supposed to do that because it hadn't been. Drive sounds wonderful. I don't really even hear it now. A little bit of seeking sound, but you should hear a little bit of seeking sound. I haven't heard a single click. Loaded right up on the first try this time. Might be my imagination, but it feels like it's even loading faster. I didn't really time it. But there we go. This is a, that's how to restore a SegaCD to functionality. It's still not perfect, but these things never were, as far as I know. Certainly I remember struggling with them a little bit back in the day at friends' houses. So we could perhaps do a little more greasing with it. Maybe the laser needs some adjusting. I don't know. But I from what I remember, this is pretty much how they work. And when we started, it didn't work at all. So hopefully you enjoyed that a little bit. There's still some work to do on this thing. The Genesis itself is unmodified, so it at least needs a recap, and it's a Model 2. I may end up doing a triple bypass on that too. Not that I want my whole channel to be Genesis triple bypasses on various models, but it seems to be what I keep ending up having on hand. So anyway, hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you'd like to see anything in particular or just have any comments in general, and I'll see you soon.